The very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier podcast, where I will sit down and converse with the superstars, the overachievers, the masters of our craft. Each episode will be a deep dive into their personal philosophies, their habits, the tools they use, and the secrets to not only their success, but overcoming failure as well.
First, find somebody you can mimic, then find somebody you can stand, and then try to focus on one style until you master that style.
So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too.
People say that you shouldn't define yourself by your work. That is not true.
You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough.
This podcast is for all of you out there who share my passion for the job and the desire to always improve. These interviews will put you in touch with the inner workings of the role models we all want to emulate. So let's get to it.
There's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Welcome, everyone. Well, as the COVID pandemic struck and international borders closed, I was unable to head south and visit one of my really good accounts in Tampa Bay, Florida. On those occasions where you're unable to tend to some horses in your care for any number of reasons, you're left in that awkward position of not knowing what the person coming in behind you is going to do and what their plan or their vision for their feat is going to be. I did not have those concerns when I found out that they were going to be using Bruce Martin in my stead. I had met Bruce several times at that account, and we actually, as you will hear in the interview, had a chance to spend an afternoon together just chatting while he was shoeing some horses and we were waiting to catch an Uber and fly out. I knew that my client was in very good hands, and I have not been disappointed. Bruce has sent me several photos keeping me updated on their feed and their progress, and his vision was the same as mine. And he has done a fantastic job of keeping those horses shod and looking beautiful. As you will hear in the following interview, Bruce possesses all of the traits of a really good craftsman. He is constantly being self-critical, paying attention to the results of his work. He's ever humble, and he's just an all-around good dude. I'm really glad that we were able to get in touch and do this interview and share some of his insights with you. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Well, I really appreciate that you did this today. You and I have met a few times in Tampa at a farm that we work at, and then you were kind enough to take on the horses that I was unable to do because of the shutdown with COVID. But we were fortunate enough to have a day where my flight leaving was later, so Shantae Stokes and I got to hang out with you, and I can't remember the gentleman's name who was with you that day, who was helping you out.
That was Chris.
And
Yep, Chris Malley.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of hours where we got to chat and swap tips and all kinds of stuff. And then I've seen your work online and in person, and you do a beautiful job. And because of those conversations, I was actually hoping to be able to have you on here.
Well, I appreciate it. And I actually appreciated it more that you asked me to do those horses. Because, sometimes that's kind of cool whenever somebody asks you to do their horses while they can't come down or can't make it to that farm. You feel very humbled whenever that happens.
Yeah, well, I knew they were in good hands. So
I don't know.
That was easy. And I appreciate that.
Chris is pretty handy.
We talked a bit about this when we met, but how did you get your start shoeing?
Kind of the typical start, it was kind of something I always wanted to do. We had horses growing up, and I used to rope calves, and my whole family rodeoed a lot. I kind of fell into the typical horse owner, the kid, but I was the kid that actually stayed home to hold the horses for our farrier. And believe it or not, I would stay home, and after we were done with all the horses, he would take me to school, which was awesome. So him and I had this really good relationship, just a great guy. How he was at shoeing horses, I don't really remember because I was young. All I know is they were always sound and we were always losing shoes. So it was a good relationship. But we were like, I look back and I'm like, why do I lose shoes? And I'm like, wait a minute.
And who was that gentleman?
His name was Mike Wiley. Mike Wiley was our horseshoer back then. Yeah, he did a good job. And from what I knew as a young guy, and whenever I say young, I mean like 10, 11 years old, I was holding the horses for him then. And he respected me, and he did it all worked out, even though I was 10. But he would take me to school, and, I'd finish up school and come home, and we had our own arena, and we had our own calves, and we'd rope. And
oh, cool.
That was the lifestyle. I'd go to rodeos and ropings, and, wouldn't always win, wouldn't always lose. So it was always fun. So I decided that's what I wanted to do.
How long did you carry on with that?
Till I was 15. There's a whole nother story with that. And I'll get to that in a minute, but I did that until I was 15, and then I had a little accident, so I stopped. So I would hold the horses for him, and I learned a lot about what he did, and I learned a lot about some of the business side that he did. Mostly I learned just how to treat people, because he was really a really nice guy.
Yeah,
even though some of the horses we had were jerks, he was always very respectful, because I was a kid. And if I didn't feel comfortable around him, I wouldn't have kept coming back to hold the horses for him, So, he was just that kind of person. You always felt comfortable around him. And I always try to be that guy too. So as I got older, the roping kind of came to a stop whenever I broke my hip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was one day while I was roping at home. We had pretty deep sand, and there was a reason for that. We always had really fresh calves, and it kind of keeps them slower, because they can't run as fast. So we can rope them all the time,
Right.
Yeah. And as a kid, that's what you want. You want to be able to rope them. You want to practice roping, not practice running. And I had a pretty small horse, and I wasn't a very big person then either. So I broke my hip. So that kind of stopped it. I couldn't stand to be in a saddle anymore. It hurt.
Oh, wow.
So I quit and found girls and that kind of thing, But in the back of my mind, that's what I always wanted to do. So high school, I got this job on a farm, and little did I know this farm would turn into what it is today. But whenever I started, I worked with just one guy. His name was Clayton. And then the owner was Don Quincy. I guess he was the president of the Florida Cattlemen's Association for a couple of years ago. Anyway, so I started working for him, and really kind of learned how to ride stupid horses a little bit better, even though it did hurt. But, I kind of put up with it. We were working cows. It was a big cow farm. But I still always wanted to go shoe horses. And we had a farrier used to come out there, and I don't remember his name for the life of me. So I used to hold horses for him as well. And always a good time. But it was always something I wanted to do. Still never got to do it. So one day I told my boss, I said, I think I want to go to farrier school. And he looked at me. This wasn't Clayton. This was Don. He says, that's the stupidest thing you could have ever told me. I was like, why do you think that? He says, there's no money in shoeing horses. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you're probably right. But I've always wanted to do it. I said, so what if I just go to school, learn how to shoe horses? I could just come back and shoe your horses, and I'll still work at the farm. And he's like, well, you're just going to get beat up. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? I've been working for you for years, and I get beat up every day by these cows, and I get beat up every day riding on these horses you have, because they're cow horses, they're not broke, they just, it was just a train wreck. So I decided that I would go to shoeing school, and I gave him the date. And man, whenever that day came, he started giving me the most crazy jobs. Like, I went from welding, like building feed troughs and sorting cattle. We'd work cows till like 2, 3 in the morning, and then go home, be back at it at 6 in the morning. I mean, it was your typical
Holy jeez.
cattle ranch job. Yeah. And there was only a handful of us. We ran 30,000 head of cattle through there a year.
Holy
It's a big deal.
jeez.
Yeah. We shipped them all to Kansas to finish out. But anyhow, this is just kind of where it all started. So he started giving me the crappy jobs. I started having to work Sundays and Christmas, Thanksgiving, because he knew I was temporary. He knew that I was leaving. Yeah. And man, I got so fed up with it. I said, you know what? I'm pretty much done with this. Like I've got to move on. I've got to get out of this. So I gave him a 2-week notice, and I had enough money saved up to go to school at that point, which I went to Kentucky Horseshoeing School. I took their 16-week course.
Okay.
With Mitch Taylor up there. Whenever it was the old school. I think it was in 2004 is whenever I went. It was the one that was in Shelbyville. It was right outside of Shelbyville. So anyway, I told him that, and the jobs got suckier, so I left. And I actually went to work at a sailboat factory building galleys and sailboats, which was right down the road from my house. It was perfect. But I thought, you know what? I'll stick this out for 6 months. I'll get a little bit more money saved up, and I'll be perfect. This will be awesome.
Yeah.
Because they were paying good, and I could put in, I was already used to working, basically
crazy hours,
27 hours a day, crazy hours, and I was basically had night vision, walking around at night on a horse. I could see everything at night. So it was perfect. I was like, I'll work as much as I can. And man, if you wanted overtime, they'd give it to you. This place was legit. I was like, okay.
Perfect situation.
Perfect situation. So I started building these galleys and spitting them out. I had a really good work ethic, evidently. And I told them whenever they hired me, I said, I'm not here for a long time. I said, I'm just here for a good time. I'm only going to be here, for 6 months. I said, and I'm out.
Yeah.
They were like, oh yeah, well, we'll see about that. I was like, okay. So, that day came along, and it was actually time for my evaluation. And he got me up in the office. They had this little crow's nest in the middle of everything, where you could look down at everybody working. I felt like a Oompa Loompa, in the candy factory,
Yeah.
I walked up there and they said, Mr. Martin, we just wanted to tell you that we're going to keep you. I said, I don't think that's going to happen. He's like, yes, sir, we're going to keep you. So mind you, this was in 2003. It was 2004, because it was right at the mark of me leaving. And I think they were paying me like $15 an hour then, with all the overtime you could get. Now, I was only, how old was I, 24? So it wasn't bad, They said, we're going to give you a $5 an hour raise, and you're going to be a floor manager, which I would still basically do the same job. What they were trying to do is keep me there, because I was 24
and
had a good work ethic, and clean cut kid, who would technically make it pretty high. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but that's kind of what they were looking for, like I was like their little poster child.
Yeah.
But I turned them down, and I turned them down because I always wanted to shoot horses. I felt like I had to go to school and figure it out. And I felt like there was all these little obstacles getting thrown in my way to keep me from doing it. And I thought that was a bigger reason to keep doing it. So I went to school. I actually got engaged to my wife now, and then I went to school.
Lots of big steps.
Yeah, lots of big steps. I did a 16-week course. I thought I wanted to shoe thoroughbreds. So whenever I got out, I got under a pile of thoroughbreds with my mentor, which was Charlie Lloyd, and his dad, which is Chuck Lloyd. And we did not work together. Charlie and Chuck did not work together. I worked with them on separate days. So we did some pretty big thoroughbred farms for a long time. I worked for Charlie probably a year and a half, and Chuck much less, because Chuck passed away about the middle of that at some point, and that was kind of rough. And Charlie, it got kind of rough, so that relationship, as far as me helping, kind of ended, after that. But Charlie and I are like best friends right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to work for him. It was a tough time of his life, and I totally understand. But
no kidding. Yeah.
I decided I did not want to shoot thoroughbreds at all. We shot a bunch of them.
And why not?
It was the whole experience. It was the whole deal. The rank horses and the now, mind you, I'm walking around with a healed up broken hip, because we're going to get into that later too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't even realize the pain that I was actually in. So, and Charlie didn't believe in hoof stands, so we didn't use a hoof stand.
Oh wow.
So all these thoroughbreds basically launch off your thigh and kick you down. I mean, they're just crazy. And he tranked them. like, or he had them trained. By the time he shot them, they were no longer trained for me. They were coming off, and they were mad. They were monsters. So, we did a lot of them at the track and a lot of them at the farms. I kind of figured out I kind of wanted to work on more calm horses. So
Yeah.
I wanted to learn how to shoe some of these sport horses. So I started going to clinics, around Tampa area where they were having clinics for some of these things. A lot of them in Ocala, I was going to and learning and trying to learn how. And a lot of what I do is kind of self-taught, just I'm more of a monkey see, monkey do kind of person. I can emulate a lot of things by looking at it, but if I read about it, I kind of get a little distracted whenever I read. I'm more of a visual kind of person, So clinics really help me out a lot. And the cool thing about Florida is, Florida's not a very big state. It is long, like you could drive a lot if you wanted to, but it's not that big. You could go anywhere in the state in just a couple of hours. So as long as you want to go, you can go. You can learn. So that's what I did. I met Robbie Hunsiger, and he got me a little bit into competing, and I did that for a little bit, did a lot of local stuff, and then we used to put on a Triple Crown down here, which was Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, and I competed in that a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Really taught me how to shoe horses and make shoes a little bit better, So I kind of kicked off from that, and, my practice built up pretty good, and just keeping my head down and just shoeing horses, learning on every foot, and Facebook helps a lot too, for sure. I look at a lot of stuff on Facebook and I'm like, man, I want to shoe like that, so you learn how to shoe like that, I have guys that work with me, and I tell them right from the start, it's like, look, I'm not here to teach you. I'm here to get you under horses, because I think that's how I started. I got under a bunch of horses until I figured things out, and I still don't have anything figured out, but I think I can talk my way out of it now. That was pretty much my start. And the other reason why I didn't really apprentice very much, and I kind of kicked myself in the butt for that. I only did 1.5 years on horses that I didn't want to do, but I got under a lot of horses. I mean, we would shoe 20, 25 horses a day, of those thoroughbreds. Now, it was fast, but I didn't really get to see the shoeing. I did all the finishing. So we were in a separate, the grooms would walk the horses over to me and hold them, as they're coming off their little sedation sleep, you could see them coming. I'm like, crap, this one's awake,
Yeah. Just the walk over was enough to sober them up.
Yes. The Green Mile, knew, like they knew, and I knew I was fixing to die. So, but anyways, the other reason why my apprenticeship was cut short, because I really wanted to go, there was a couple of guys down here that I really wanted to go with and work with, but I didn't get to because financially I couldn't.
Yeah.
And that really stinks, but that's just the way it was. My wife got pregnant, and we all know how that happens, but I really needed to make money.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I did. I put my head down and I shod rank horses for a while. If anybody called me, I went there. And there's times I got chased by geese. So those kind of places that have geese. Oh yeah. I was in them. Oh yeah. And I held on to them. Like I wanted them. So she got pregnant, and we had health insurance. We didn't have maternity. We are that couple that they're very selfish people. So we didn't want to have kids, but she got pregnant. So we had the kids, and I had to just keep my head down and go to work. So I don't know if you realize how much it is to have a kid, but it cost us $18,000 per head.
I have heard.
Yeah. And they're only 18 months apart.
Right.
Yeah. So from 9 months of knowing you're going to have a kid, now count 18 months, we had to come up with like $36,000 at like 25 years old.
Yeah.
While I'm still apprenticing and trying to build a business. Her too. She manages horse shows. She works for her parents, which is right next to us. So she's a horse show manager. And they own a horse show facility, put on schooling shows and, schooling hunter jumper shows, dressage shows, and Florida Ranch Horse is, they primarily rent the place and they show there. So we were still trying to build that business. We didn't get the last nail drove into those barns till 2004, if that gives you any idea how fresh it was before she started making any money. Yeah. Yeah. So we were very young financially, if that makes sense. So the struggle started off pretty early. So I had to start shoeing horses. Apprenticeship was not really in the cards. So I really had to figure out how to do this without having somebody drilling it into my head. And it took a long time to be able to do anything worth looking at. It really did.
Well, one of the things that I noticed when we talked that one day was the fact that you are super observant and always judging what you're doing and trying to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see how, like, you could chew for years, and if you're not actually looking to improve and adjust and make yourself better,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could chew the same way you did the horse 10 years ago,
Yeah.
like tomorrow kind of thing, right? But if you're constantly observing, and it's been a common thing with a lot of the guests where they'll say, like, I just wasn't happy with the way the feet were going, so I changed something, or it caused me to seek out information on this particular issue, and then I improved it that way. So there are so many different ways of coming at this education wise. So it doesn't surprise me that you were able to improve that much. Just from our conversation, I could tell that you were that type of person. I think you have to be curious in order to advance, right?
I think everybody has a level of that curiosity they're very curious on what they can do. They kind of push themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the guys that work with me that I try to help and teach how to do certain things, I tell them that, they'll be struggling with one thing, like size of a clinch, for an example. I like to see nice little square clinches.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell them, it's like, they'll be like, oh, this is so hard to be so consistent. It's like, yes, but once you figure it out, you'll totally forget this struggle. And then you'll start struggling with something else,
Yep.
more meaningful, that you were struggling with before, but you just didn't know it.
Yep.
So the biggest thing that I always try to tell people is have a system. You have to have a system for everything, whether you trim feet, shoe feet, how you do it, just the same thing over and over again. Like whenever I was talking to you, you said your system, you build your whole branch of your shoe per side, your toe and then your toe cord and then your heel.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. I start at my toe. I do medial and lateral with my toe first because that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? You were like, I do my toe quarter and my toe. Yeah, all that one side.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tried that and it totally racked my brain. I was like, that guy's a wizard. I can't do this. But I stuck at it and I can somewhat get it now, So it was just one of those things that, I'll see something and I want to challenge myself to do it. And I like to do practical things. I'm not really I don't want to say competing is impractical because it's very practical, but for me, it's not practical. It's beneficial for me and I should do it, but it's not practical for me right now.
Well, no, I think the thing is, I've gone through stages where competing was, and I learned a lot from it. But I think the other side to it is also you have a family and a life that you need to get back to, and you need to make money for, right? To support. So
right.
We all have to make that choice between, okay, how much time can we devote to all of these different things? Because competing isn't just the weekend that you go. Like it isn't just the Saturday, it's the hours in the shop leading up to it to get there, right? Like it's a commitment,
right?
Whatever competition you sign up for.
You're exactly right. That's exactly how I feel about it.
You pick your poison.
My kids they're getting older, so it makes it a lot easier. I can spend some time in the shop. I can spend some time with the guys, making shoes in the evenings now. So it's a little bit easier because we both own a business. So she needs her time with her business just as much as I need my time. And I am a 9-to-5er. I get to my first stop at 9 and I usually am home by 7 at the latest.
Okay.
Most of my area is it's less than an hour away. Other than if I go to Gainesville, it's a little farther. It's about an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I kind of keep everything close, which is pretty handy. But we're talking about systems. I usually start on hind feet on horses.
I know. I was going to ask you that. I remember that from our conversation. I actually tried doing it. I found it actually makes you go through the horse faster.
It does, doesn't it?
Like the job doesn't seem as long.
No, I don't know why, but it seems to be faster. I kind of think it's the attention span of the horse, to be honest with you. I think whenever the horse gets kind of aggravated, it's harder to do them behind, and they probably get aggravated with us about midway of the cycle, but they put up with it long enough to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured if you start on hinds first, you can get through front feet. They can snatch on you all you want. You're not going to die, but you're going to die on those hind feet if they snatch on you and kick you. So
Yep.
I hate saying that, but I learned that shoeing for Charlie. We always did hind feet first, even trims, hind feet first, broodmares, hind feet first, babies, hind feet first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he taught me that. And, he's had a very successful career shoeing thoroughbreds. So I figured I better listen to that. And his dad did the same thing. So,
Mm-hmm. Right.
so I always started hind feet first. And I don't know, I seem to be able to shoe hind feet better than front feet. And I don't know if that's normal or not. Do you shoe hind feet better than front feet, or you shoe front feet better than hind feet?
I don't know. I think I go through stages where I think, I think I've got my hinds better. And then I'll go through another stage where I'm like, no, I'm not happy with these, but I am happier with the fronts.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever am settled, but
Yeah, you're exactly like I am. But if you had to pick an end
Mhm.
at a competition, I would so pick hinds, or a certification. I would
Right.
so pick hinds over fronts. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
You know what? And I did for my CF run. You could choose between hinds or fronts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I took hinds for that reason, because at that stage I definitely felt more comfortable there.
Yeah, they chose hinds for me. I was like, yes, which was awesome. I actually went up. Robbie took me up to Steve Shimmersheim's shop in Illinois, and that's where I took my CF. So they picked hinds for me, and I passed that same day. And I'd been shoeing horses for a minute, so if I didn't pass, I was really going to be hard on myself, because I'd been shoeing horses long enough. I should have passed it, but I got to the last foot, and this thing was thrushy. This horse was so thrushy behind that it was sensitive. And I'm nailing up, and this thing starts kicking out. I'm bleeding, like I'm beat up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Like I'm nowhere from home, and I'm beat up and bleeding, and all I'm trying to do is shoe this horse. So they stopped me and bandaged me up and sedated the horse, and I got finished up, and I passed it.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I was like, this is perfect. The Florida boy is just up here getting his butt kicked in Illinois.
Well, and it's interesting though how just a pair of feet can be so intense, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because of the input on it, and
Mhm.
like your brain is exhausted when you're done that.
Yeah, and we stayed up late practicing for a 3-man draft class that we were entered in the Florida contest. So I was tired. We got there early. I didn't eat breakfast, and I didn't test until, it was like 3:00 on that horse. And I hadn't eaten anything. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It was terrible. Yeah. I was like, this is going to be the worst experience of my life. But I think since I was like malnourished and basically in starvation, I wasn't nervous. So that helped a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I actually passed all 3 parts that time, and I'd never taken it before, and I passed.
Pro tip.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't eat. Just starve yourself. I should have done that before I started talking to you. But I passed all 3 parts up there. It was pretty humbling, actually, because I never in a million years thought I would pass, my written, my shoe board, and my horse.
All in one go.
I figured I'd probably pass my horse because, like I said, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I had been shoeing horses long enough. If I didn't pass the horse, I really needed to rethink what I was doing at that point. Because I think I'd been shoeing horses for 10 years at that point, so
Right.
I should have passed, and that doesn't mean that everybody that's been shoeing horses should pass, but I'm very hard on myself.
Never would have gathered that.
Well, it's true. I don't remember what my scores were at that point. Whenever you pass, you really don't care, because you're so excited that you passed.
Yeah, it's true.
And I didn't care, but I don't think I passed the written, but by like 1 point, then.
Yeah.
I skated through that one. So, and then I thought, okay, well, I passed that. I'm going to go for my CJF. So, well, let me talk about that a little bit. The CF. The experience was awesome. The climb to get to take the test, I only knew I was going to take it like the weekend before. Robbie's like,
Oh,
hey,
wow.
we're going to Illinois to, maybe it was like a couple weekends. We're going to Illinois to practice for a 3-man draft with Steve, and they're having a certification. So you're going to take the test. I was like, crap. I was like, I don't even have a shoe board, you know? He's like, well, you better get on it. I was like, I got 2 weekends. I've got 2 weekends to do this. So I said, okay. So I said, Self, you're going to have to get this thing together. So I started on my shoe board first. And then in the evenings, I would study. And I actually called a couple of friends, and I would have study dates with them. Like we would go to Denny's and sit in the back and have study dates like during the week.
Yep.
And just order food and just talk and study and read basically Doug Butler's book, you know, the P3. And then we had some study guides that we kind of went over. I ended up passing. It all worked out. And I decided I was going to take my CJF. It was the first test I took was down in Daryl Bean's shop. I don't know if you know Miss Daryl.
No.
She's down South Florida. Awesome lady. Love her to death. And she came down, and Bryce Burnett was there. There's a bunch of pretty good hands there. And I don't remember. I think Bryce was my tester. And I was building my bar shoe. I made this really nice bar shoe, but I cut too short material. And it was like, it turned out like a little pony shoe. You know, and they're all telling me, oh, if you'd have stretched it here, if you stretched it there, I was like, it don't fit. It's never going to fit. It's just garbage. You know, it's just not going to happen.
You get into that stretching mode and
yeah. So, but I did get it welded. I got it fullered. I got it punched. The nails dropped. It didn't fit the pattern. Like it was way too small. And I'm sure there were other elements in it that didn't pass too, but it was pretty much a turd. And got to the shoeing portion, and my system was trim all 4 feet. And then and then measure, and while they're looking at the feet, start my shoes. You know, I really didn't have a good system then, so it didn't work. And I got in a hurry, and one of my last clips I was drawing, I knocked a hole in the base, and it was kind of funny.
A smoke hole.
Yeah, Bryce, a smoke hole. I like that. So Bryce looks at the shoe, and he sticks a nail through the clip and hands it back to me. And he's like, we can't pass this. I was like, dang it. Yeah. So they stopped me. It was on a hind shoe, and I'd already had the front shoes made and clipped, toe clipped. Well, we didn't do that. And then obviously I failed the written because I just didn't study enough for it. So I took it again in Florida at one of our deals, and I passed the bar shoe, passed the written, but I cut too much steel on my horse. So I failed it then, and then kind of life got in the way, and then I stopped taking it, you know, and I should have kept going because now I've got to take everything again.
Right. Yeah. What's the time limit? 2 years?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I think the rules changed at some point.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to get back with you on that one. I'm not real sure, but I know that I definitely am out of time, which is fine because it's been like 5 years. I certainly would not. I would hope that a 5-year-old bar shoe still wouldn't sit in there to pass. And then they'd be like, yeah, you passed because you passed 5 years ago. I hope that I would have to make a new one. So life kind of got in the way, you know. I started fishing on my off time and that kind of thing, and, you know, hanging out with the kids. And so I kind of gave up on that dream for a little while, but I'd like to get back into it. You know, there's a lot of positives that come out of that. You know, I met a lot of good people out of that taught me a lot.
Yeah, I think that's everybody's.
I would say the journey to the CJF is way more exciting than the journey to the CF. It was for me, you know, because I only had 2 weeks to prepare for the CF. So it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah, it was a short journey. Yeah,
it was a short journey, but it was worth it.
Even the fact that you have to do those components over again, just that process of going through and practicing making bar shoes again and getting into the books. I find I do better on the written stuff if I study with other people too. Like we quiz each other. And so, yeah, just going through that process again, it's amazing how much it just changes your day-to-day work again, right?
Yeah.
You just pick up on stuff that you didn't even the first time.
If I had to say anything, the best thing that I've learned through that process is your trim never really changes, right? But your fit does.
Right.
And I think you and I talked about that actually in Florida. The trim is the trim. You know, that's basically the principles. That's the foundation. But your shoe application may change. So, but we're not going to change our trim. And the trim is in the book. You know what I mean? So it's pretty helpful. If you can get high scores on that trim and still fail your shoes, you're there. You're winning, you know, in my opinion.
Yep. for sure.
But I need to get back at it because there's a lot of people that call me and say, "Hey, Bruce, when are you going to take that CF?" Or I'll send them a Snapchat, and they'll be like, "When are you taking your CF?" Because I do make handmaids, or my CJF. Because I do make handmaids, and I send pictures of them, and they'll be like, "Oh, you need to take your CJF," and I'm like, "I'm at work right now, practicing for that isn't at work, So, or I guess I'm practicing for it whenever I'm shooting horses. I don't know.
Yep, I think you are in one way or another. Now, it's funny. So you said about that's the trim is out of the book. That's the standard trim. But have you run into, I've seen it quite a bit now, and I've had people try and teach me like these different variations of like the solar plane trim,
Mm-hmm.
where they're just trimming the heels down to the same distance as opposed to perpendicular to the cannon bone and stuff like that. Have you run into any of that? It's a bit of a mystery to me. Nobody has officially, I haven't seen it in a textbook. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't been able to find some of these things. There are quite a few people I'm surprised have embraced it. So that's what gave it more clout for me to even attempt it. But I found anytime I tried that particular method, if a vet happened to x-ray or something like that, stuff wasn't lining up the way it would
Yeah.
with the standard trim that you and I would know.
Well, I don't know if I could answer that question. I'd have to see the trim, that you're talking about. I do
Yeah.
pay attention to the sole. The sole plane helps me a lot as markers. So in Florida, feet are they may be a little bit different. You shoot down here, so you see them, through the summer months, they get kind of flat. Some of them get kind of distorted, especially horses and shoes, because the foot just doesn't break up, so it stays together. But as they grow mass, it wants to leave, basically the zip code that it was originally put in. So,
Yep. It's a good way of putting it.
yeah, so we don't have that mass, or some people call it cup or depth, the vertical depth in certain areas of the state. Fortunately, where I live, I live in a very dry area, so it's awesome. But I shoe in some very, very wet places, and those feet are flat, 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 flat. So whenever you trim those feet, you're not going to get your typical AFA trim, heels trimmed to the highest, widest point of your frog, that kind of thing. It's not going to happen.
Right.
You're going to be turning your rasps, to the side, and frogs good. You got a prolapse frog basically. And these are even some barefoot horses are like that, which is hard to believe, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of an individual situation for me. I like to leave as much mass on a foot where I can, but in these wet places, you can't leave mass on a foot. It'll just blow apart, in 2 weeks, because the horse is still bearing weight on that foot. And then what happens whenever a fingernail gets wet? It gets soft and it crushes. So you've got to trim those feet, even though you don't really want to, but you have to. And there's not many places like that, but there's a few. I was at one of them the other day, and I pull the shoes, don't touch the sole, just rasp them up and burn the rest on, nail them up, and that's it. It seems to work for those guys, but I couldn't do that, where I live. I have to basically leave foot on these guys, because they've got really nice feet. And if you go to trim them short, they're not going to be very competitive.
Right. Yep. On the surfaces they're on and stuff.
Yeah, on the surface.
Now, do you have to change the shoeing for the wetter areas? Like, do you use a different section of shoe or not?
I don't know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. I know what I do. I use bigger sections. I like front shoes. I'll use a lot of Kirkhart shoes, and I like the 25x8 section. And if the foot will allow it, obviously. If I've got enough wall. If I don't have enough wall, I do fit them pretty full, and I fit to nail. I don't know if that's right or wrong. It works for me at the moment. Obviously, 5 years from now, things will probably change, because I think we all change every 5 years.
Right.
But it works for me right now. But behind, I don't fit as full. I like to fit them a little tighter. I like the foot to get in the ground. So I use a lot of DF selects behind, because it's a narrower section, but I use a lot of 10 millimeter behind, so they have some bite.
Right.
Right or wrong, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then everybody's moving to this synthetic footing with these guys. So maybe I should be putting a wider section on them behind. But I haven't had many complaints, and I haven't felt very many sore horses behind. So I'm kind of sticking to what I'm doing right now.
Well, and it's interesting. I've seen quite a few in Wellington and often up in Canada. We'll get them when they come back from Wellington from other farriers. And quite a few of those guys on the synthetic footing are using the narrower section as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense, right? You would think a wider section, but I don't know.
Yeah. And I've heard different versions of this, but Dave Farley had mentioned it, and I saw it in an article. I can't remember the gentleman who wrote it in the AFJ, and he was saying because of the way the synthetic surface reacts with the shoe, you kind of take what we used to think of flotation in the sand with the wider section. And he said, with that wider section, it's like a pencil eraser on pencil eraser. So you get more traction.
Oh, yeah.
With the synthetic. So they believe the wider the shoe, the more of a stop you're going to get coming off of a jump or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them I've seen even in the front end have come to a narrower. It almost in some cases will look very weedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll have a size 4 shoe in 3/4 by 3/8.
Yeah, a little spaghetti shoe on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to rethink my SX8s.
Right. Well, so anyways, I've seen variations of that, but I really think the same way as you do with the Hines that, yeah, you do get a little bit more bite, especially in the sand. But I think even in the synthetic, sometimes you can almost give them too much flotation. And I had clients that were complaining that on corners, they were sliding a bit, like they weren't gripping the same way.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah. And I had some I even switched to concave, and the horses seemed to be fine in them, and they weren't.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. In the Hines, not in front.
Yeah, not the front.
But just based on but based on what the client wanted, they saw an improvement just because the horse, they felt more sure of their footing.
No, that definitely makes sense.
So interesting.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. But, it's kind of funny that we get complacent sometimes on what we're doing to these feet. And we don't really ask ourselves those questions. It's like, what could we do to help? But we still have it in our head that we need to get this section for this horse. And it may not need that section. It may need something totally different, just like what you said. But we find what's comfortable for us, what we get used to using, and we just start using it and using it and using it.
Right. Yeah.
And it may not be that case for every horse. So that is very interesting. I do put a lot of rockers, which I think you do too. I think you put a lot of set toes and rockers in fronts and hinds. Yeah. And I found that helps keep a lot of these feet together in these wet conditions down here. As long as you've got the depth, as long as you've got the depth to do it with. And I found that helps, and not leaving a lot of leverage out the back, especially on front feet. Getting that shoe tucked under that foot, that last little bit, seems to help from beating those heels up a little bit. And pads, leather pads, those were sent down here from God. I swear, horses' feet love them. Leather pads and sole pack. Yeah.
No, it makes a huge difference. There are some farriers, especially in my area, especially the more traditionally minded ones, who hate pads. They refuse to use them. Yeah, and I've seen so many feet, like the complaint I always heard was, oh yeah, the foot's just rotting underneath them. And I've seen more feet improve with white line, with the sole pack, or even the Equipack soft with a copper sulfate underneath it. Some of those feet were the strongest feet I had this summer.
That's some of the most beautiful feet I've ever seen is what's under those pads. It's crazy. The only time I hate pads are those feet that have that really inverted medial side. Those are tough to nail up to begin with, and then you add that extra depth.
Yeah, and then put a pad.
Yeah, and then with the pad, I hate those. I always feel like I'm going to stick them, and this just scares me a lot trying to nail those up. But those are out there. You got to get them done.
Yep.
But yeah, I shoe a lot of combined driving horses, Friesians, and fell ponies as well, and all of those get padded all the way around. And I would have to say those are my most favorite horses to shoe. They really are. They're just a really cool horse, and big feet. The fell ponies are big bodied but short, and they have big feet, nice feet. 1/2-inch hoof wall. It's like you can't mess these feet up. You know, I don't care what you do
Right.
to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
You can be the worst booger in the world, and you'd look like a superstar on these horses' feet. It's pretty amazing. So I don't post a lot of those pictures because heck, anybody can shoe those guys. I don't want to make anybody mad and say, oh yeah, well anybody can shoe those guys, because I don't want to be that guy.
Well, and with those guys, when you pad them up behind and in front, what is the reason for that? Is it the terrain that they're going to be on? Is it sole bruising?
The terrain they're going to be on, sole bruising and rocks. They really work those horses, or the ones that I shoe, they work them in asphalt millings every day. So in
Oh,
asphalt
wow.
millings is really
Okay.
abrasive. We don't even get resets out of these shoes. Like they work them that hard.
I was going to ask.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No resets out of them. It's kind of strange too, because if they lose a shoe on one foot, which is pretty rare whenever they're in Florida, but whenever they ship to Maine, they turn them out up there, so they will lose shoes. But whenever they're here, I rarely lose any shoes on them. But whenever I do, I have to make a whole new set for that end of that horse, because the shoes are so wore out.
Oh,
You can't
right.
put this nice crisp shoe on it and then not change the other one. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's kind of aggravating.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever shod like mounted patrol horses or any horse like carriage horses.
No, I haven't.
Well, if you ever get the
No.
honor to, they go through their shoes so fast. So you'll know what I'm talking about. It's super fast.
Right.
So there's no rolled toes. You don't forge a rolled toe into one because they'll roll it right off of there for you. You can rocker
Right.
them, and sometimes that helps. But I have actually seen where they wore through the crisp part of the rocker on the ground side, and it almost like what you were talking about with that smoke clip. It was almost like a smoke
Yeah.
rocker toe. Yeah, they just wear right through them. And then your lateral
Yikes.
branch on your hinds. Your lateral branch on your hinds takes the abuse on those guys, those Frisians, because they're pretty
Right.
base narrow.
Yeah.
And they kind of reach up under themselves and land kind of hard laterally. Then I've tried trimming them every different way, and I've just come to the conclusion that's how they are. So I just leave it alone. But I really enjoy shoeing those guys. The only thing I don't like about the Frisians are those arrowhead hind feet. Those are the toughest to fit. But it's challenging, and I like challenges.
To make that point on your shoe.
Yeah, and then toe
Mhm.
clipping those behind with a pad, that's a whole nother challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because your quarters move. Whenever you pad something and fit out front of the foot, your quarter in your shoe, it moves back.
Yeah.
So you got to
Right.
remember that. So I can't tell you how many times I've been like, oh, this
Yep.
is sweet, and then put a pad on it and be like, oh, pull this pad back off. We got to move the quarters. It happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On those guys, I use extra heavy leather up front on the Frisians. And unless they're a really big-footed one, I fit them a little bit tighter, so I'll just use a heavy. And then I usually use regulars behind because I don't fit them quite as full behind.
Oh, okay.
But the fell ponies are
Gotcha.
basically the same, except I just use regulars all the way around on those guys because they kind of have that nice round
Okay.
foot up front. I don't need to create roundness with my shoeing. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And now there was something else that I watched you do, and we talked a little bit about it that day, is you actually put more pitch in your nail holes.
I do.
On the shoes, right?
Yep.
Like you run a Pritchell almost every pair of shoes I saw you do new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You ran the Pritchell through, which probably explains why your nail lines are so nice.
I back punch most all my shoes. And I found that not only do you get a little higher nail, my nail lines are terrible, by the way. That's something that I'm trying to work on, is getting a better nail line, especially getting my toenail up there. And
Not the ones you post on.
Hey, let me tell you, I saved some of those pictures for weeks before I post them. So those are like the best of the best. So wait till you see the worst of the worst. Whew. But so I back punch a lot of my shoes, and I do it for two reasons. Number one, you get better pitch in your nail, because keg shoes, it doesn't matter what it is, they don't have very good pitch. They don't have very good pitch in their nail. And especially if you want to fit full. If you want to fit full, you've got to get more pitch in your nails on front feet. So, and the other reason is to keep your nail from shearing. I think if we leave that edge on that inside of that nail hole, it scars that nail once you block up or not block. If you just drive your nail, I think it scars it.
Yep.
And you can have that nail shear off. So I think it's kind of twofold for me, that it's just easier to run that back punch in there as a safety net than have nail shear off. So that's why I do it. You don't get as many resets
That's a great point.
because the nail holes are bigger, essentially. They're a little bit bigger.
Right. Right.
But you don't run the risk of those nails shearing off, which is, to me, more important. Rather make a new shoe whenever it's time to make a shoe after I pulled the shoe off the horse and have to make a new shoe from him not having a shoe on it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there was something else I was going to ask you, and that was about you teach at UF, right?
I do.
So this is something I just learned today.
Yeah, I don't tell a lot of people because I don't want people to think that I know stuff ever. So I don't tell anybody. I think you might be the first person I've told this that's not like in my immediate circle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Now I'm outing you on a podcast.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Well, I figured one day it would get out, but like even whenever they have stuff they want to post online, I'm like, don't include me in this, because I'm not that guy. I might put some stuff on Facebook, but the only reason why I do that is because of the shutdown that we had. We were having no clinics, and I wanted something to inspire some of these people that were in my inner circle, my close net, to do better, because we weren't able to get together. But I kind of got used to doing it, and I just started doing it a lot. So it has nothing to do with arrogance at all. It had to do with just helping my friends that were in this to just do better and know that we're all struggling just like they are, even though we can't hang out anymore. But now Florida opened back up, so we can hang out. But yes, I do. I teach Farrier practicum there, and we have 12 students a year, and it's a 16-week course. And it's only 2 days a week. So I go up there during the spring for 16 weeks, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It puts a huge burden on my schedule, but I'm going to tell you something. It is a awesome experience. If anybody ever gets to have that experience, I would suggest you do it. It's really, really humbling. So I really have a good time.
Yeah, who would the students be? Are these vet students? Are these people training to be farriers?
Some of them are vet students. It's part of the animal science program. So it's basically anybody who wants to take the class. We had 48 applicants this year, and we only accept 12. So,
oh wow!
But they're mostly animal science majors. Yeah, seniors, I think, and then they can go to vet school after that if they want to, and then they have a podiatry program at the vet school as well.
Okay.
And I also shoe the horses at UF at that facility, which is the horse teaching unit. Let's say we have about 60 horses there all the time, and they're under my care. They have a couple other units. Some other guys do, but this is, I think, is my 6th year teaching there, and I've been shoeing the horses there for, well, it was shortly after I got out of school, really. So probably about 15 years.
Wow.
I was up there today, and it was kind of neat because I was talking to these students. We had 24 of them there today, which is a grooming class that one of my friends teaches, and he had me come in and help him with, showing them different ailments of the foot, different, thrush and white line disease, and what to look for in some of these feet. And as I'm looking at these horses that are tied to the wall, they're all aged, 15-year-old horses. And I started these guys as weanlings. I said it out loud, but I didn't realize that, it just doesn't really dawn on you how long you've been doing those horses. And these kids, I don't even know how old these kids are. These kids aren't very old that are in this grooming class. They're probably 19, 20 years old. And these horses, they're walking up to their sides and they're basically handing them the feet. And I'm like, you know what? That's kind of cool. These guys are that broke, and I was part of that they're just handing them their feet. They don't even care,
kidding.
That's another experience if you ever have the chance to do it.
Cool. So with this course, are you doing actual shoeing, or is it just the theory side?
It's practical.
What are they learning in that 16 weeks?
Yep, it is very practical.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the first day, we actually have them getting under horses, which is kind of cool. Now, they're just picking them up and picking them out, but they're getting into position. They're trying to get that muscle memory started. The first day, I want them picking up feet and handling horses. And it gives me an opportunity to see as a whole, as that class, where they're weak, as far as what they really need to work on the first day. The second day, we step back from horses and we go to the classroom. Right away, they'll get an experience of what they're going to get into. and a lot of them hated it. They hate that first experience, but I think it kind of sets the bar of
Yep.
what to expect. So then we go into the classroom. We spend very, very little time in the classroom. We spent 2 days. When did we start this? We've been in it so far for almost a month. We've only spent 2 days in the classroom. One day may not be cold to you, but anything 30 degrees here is just freezing cold, and we're gonna it's like a blizzard. So we spent and we always have one day that we'll spend watching videos in the classroom, and it's always Doug Butler. So it's pretty awesome. So we get to watch Doug make shoes and shoe a horse. So that's what we did one day in the classroom because it was bitter cold out. And then the second day, we actually have 2x4s cut up, and we teach them how to use their knives. So they use their knife on 2x4s, how to hold it, and they carve into it. It may not make sense to you guys, but
Oh, wow.
whenever you have 12, basically 22, 23-year-old girls, they really need a 2x4 before they get a horse hoof so they can learn how to use it. No offense to girls
That
out
makes
there,
sense.
but which is really cool. One of the girls that works for me on Thursdays was in my class. In that class, I think it was 3 years ago, Julia Nelson, and she went to Kentucky Horseshoeing School and came back and started working for some guys in Ocala. She lives quite a ways from me, and I had enough help at the time. I didn't need her, but now she's working for me on Thursdays, which is kind of neat to see somebody go full circle from those beginnings, that little class, to horseshoeing school, to her apprenticeship. And she's going to be quite handy. She's a cool dude. Whenever you're down, I would like for her to ride with you one day. So you need to let me know when that's going to happen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's
that'd
pretty
be
cool.
fun. Yeah, well, I don't know that either.
I know, it's terrible. So the class, we dive right into that, and then we get them trimming cadaver legs, and we have a source for those, and they're not UF horses. Thank goodness, because all of those people know what horses they are. So we have a source for cadaver legs.
Right.
So we get cadaver legs, and they start trimming on those, and then they move on to trimming horse feet, and then we move on to forge and anvil work. And we start shaping shoes, and they start shoeing cadaver legs, and then they start shoeing horses in that order. Yep. So it's kind of cool. Their last day of class, they'll shoe a foot on a horse. So, and whenever I say it's 2 days a week, it's only 2 hours a day. So it's not a full day. So we have all this stuff we got to get crammed into this curriculum.
No kidding.
Yeah, the syllabus is, trying to get all that stuff done. It's a challenge, but if you've got a good group, you can definitely get through it. And this year I happen to have a really good group. I've been very fortunate because the fella that picks these kids, he knows a lot of them. So he makes sure that they have a good work ethic, so which is awesome.
Right. Cool. We kind of talked about this before we had the interview, where it's the questions that you get asked by them and by the people who ride along with you. They really force you to kind of question what you're doing and why. And it's kind of funny how that teaches you a lot, teaches you to look inward, and if you can't explain it, then maybe you need to look it up or whatever.
Yeah. So we do things as a whole, as horseshoers, we do things kind of on autopilot a lot of times, and we know it works, but we don't know why it works. So I think having somebody green, especially green, ride with you, they ask those silly questions, those questions that you would never think somebody would ask you. And they'll ask you those questions, and you're like, whoa, I need to figure that one out, because I do that. You're absolutely right, but I don't know why. So, you'll get to thinking about that driving down the road, and you're like, well, I really need to figure out why. And then you kind of figure out why somewhat, or you'll do something to a foot, like I think we're all guilty of this one, is we don't really get a real flat trim. So we rocker our shoe a little bit to get full contact. I mean, I've done it. I'm sure everybody's done it. But they'll ask you that question, like, hey, why did you rocker that shoe? It's like, crap, now I got to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
So, it's because my trim wasn't flat, but then in the back of your head, you're going to be like, well, whenever I come back, what am I going to see? Am I going to see improvement in this foot? Should I put a rocker in that shoe? Maybe that was the the world telling me that it needed a rocker. But I like having people with me. I shoe a lot of farms without people around, and good, bad, or indifferent, but I do. I don't particularly like people. I don't like horse owners that much because I'm a horse owner myself, and so I know how they act about things. So I would just assume just show up with my helper and just get things done and not have to deal with people. Yep, they can Venmo me or mail me a check or leave cash, whatever they want to do. I really don't care. Just let me get it done and I'll leave. And it doesn't matter if there's 20 horses there or just one horse. I would just rather be by myself. I wouldn't say I'm a loner because I like doing things and hanging out with people, but I don't know. It's just kind of different. I think we're all kind of like that. If we have a helper, we would rather just rely on them to take care of the things around us than rely on somebody else to hold a horse. I don't know if that makes sense. I cross tie almost every day.
No, and I think sometimes too, having that person with you who has your back as opposed to is going to be on their cell phone with about 3 feet of lead.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. Sometimes it's almost a life and death situation. Like, they at least have your back. That, and
you trust them.
Yeah,
and they trust you. If I have a hard time nailing a horse up, I'll say, Josh, get under there and finish this horse up, nail this thing up. And I'm at the head at that point. So I know without a doubt that he's safe because I've got this horse. And he knows that he's safe if I'm holding it. So there's that, but I just assume go in and do what I got to do and leave. And I'm not real friends with my clients. Some people are. Some people go out drinking with them and have fun and that kind of thing. I'm not that guy. I go in and shoe them and pretty much leave. I hang, if there's other farriers there, I'll hang out with them all day if they'll have me there. Well, that. So I will. I don't care. I'll call and cancel. Just to hang out because I might learn something. You never know. There might be something that.
No, it's a lot of those conversations have taught me more takeaway stuff than even a clinic sometimes. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, would you like to do the short answer questions?
Sure. Go ahead.
This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Tectorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. Do you have a favorite book?
We talked about this earlier. I'm not much of a reader.
Yeah, and that's why I said that with a little bit of hesitancy.
Right now, I think it'd be Facebook. I think Facebook would be
That's a great answer.
Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite brand of nails?
Right now, I'm really enjoying the Liberty nails, and I've been using the copper nails for a while. And I don't really like change very much, and I blame Charlie for that because Charlie used to tell me all the time, "Never change anything," and I'm like, "But you have to." But I kind of got hard headed like that, and I used Mustad concave forever, and I was always having a hard time with those nails, and they would either drive super high and not come out, or you put a little hook in them and they drive super low. So I was constantly pulling nails. At the end of the day, I'd have a pile of nails in my bottom of my box. So I started using Liberties, and I have less nails in the bottom of my box. And then recently I was talking to a friend of mine who just bought Farrier's Depot, Jason Miner, and he's like, I use a lot of these LX nails, which are Liberty LX, the copper. So I started using those, and those nails are good, but they just don't lock into my shoes like I like them to do. And it's because they don't have that taper. They have more of a stop at the head, so if you look at them, you'll see the difference in them. So I like nails that my helper cusses me out trying to pull them out of the shoe. So if it gets like that, I'm staying with that nail. And I don't mean the nail heads wore out. I'm talking about it's locked in there. So, because I think that's what keeps your shoes tight is your nail fit in your shoe, not your clinch. I think you can rasp your clinches right off. As long as your nails fit your shoes, that sucker's not getting loose. But I do like the E-Slim line of Liberty copper coated. Yeah.
Okay. And do you find that the copper makes a difference in the climate that you're in and with the potential for white line and everything else, I think you'd be a good candidate to have seen whether or not it works or not.
I don't know if it does or not, because my second favorite nail isn't copper coated. So I don't know. But I use a pile of copper coated, those E-Slims. But I'm gonna say yes, because I have not seen a lot of nasty white lines with shoes on them lately. So I'm going to say yes, unless they're in aluminum.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different deal, you know. But I do think aluminum reacts differently with the copper coated, you know. So if I'm nailing on aluminum, I try to not use copper coated nails.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it has a reaction to it. And I don't know, I could be completely wrong, or that just could be the aluminum, but I also drill my nail holes out on aluminum, pitch them.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be my problem too.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm going to have to look at that.
That's a to be continued kind of thing.
That's a to be continued, because I have very little scientific knowledge about that.
We all learn as we go.
We do. Yep.
What shoe sizes do you generally have to stock the most of?
Ones and twos, two Hines especially. DF Select, size 2, 10 mil. And then size 1, 25 by 8 toe clipped. Yep. That would be my go-to. There was a time where I only stocked DF front toe clipped. That's all I stocked. I grind the toe clip off and draw my own clips, even if it was a toe clip, and I'd draw my own quarter clips and turn fronts into Hines.
Really?
Oh yeah, that right there. If you'll do that, if you'll actually pull all your shoes out and you'll do that, you can shape shoes for days. But not the first couple of months. The first couple of months, you're going to go through some serious propane, and you're never going to be able to reset those shoes, because keg shoes, for whatever reason, after about 25 times of cooling off and heating back up, that steel is trash and the nail holes water out. So, but it'll make you better, because you have to make new shoes every time. But yeah, true. So instead of making handmaids, I did that for a while. That right there will make you better. I should have kept going, because I never got to that point where I was better. But yeah, that right there will definitely help you shape, and it'll actually help you trimming feet, because if you can trim a foot, it makes shaping shoes so much easier. Like so much easier. Like they just flow.
Yep.
And not to get off subject, because my most used shoe is those two shoes, but I use a lot of size 2s too, but my fronts as well. But I would say size 1 front toe clipped, and my hind shoes are the 10 mil DF Selects, size 2. But I also use a crap ton of size 4 DF 25 by 10 toe clipped on those driving horses.
On the fronts, yeah.
On the fronts, yeah. I use a smaller shoe. It's like a 3 behind on those little footed. They got, I don't know why Friesians have tinier feet behind than you do up front. They're weird. Those are weird horses. They are. They're so strange.
When you were saying that, so the trim, yes, I do find once my trimming got better, it did make the rest of the process much smoother, because you can actually set yourself up, right, to make the shaping easier and look nicer. So was there more you wanted to say on that?
I do. So I look at pictures a lot of other people's work, and I don't criticize it vocally, but I do to myself, and it's not really criticizing what they've done, but I look at stuff and I think to myself, man, if they would have just done this, I think that flat spot would not have been in that shoe. But if you look at the top side, you see that it fit. So it's telling me that it's the trim, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you'll see consistency in people's work where it's consistently that way. And you know darn good and well that it's in the trim because of the consistencies. Like, you can't tell me that out of every horse they shoe, they all have those flat spots. Well, they do, because it's in your trim. Does that make sense?
Right. Yep.
Like I said, I'm not trying to criticize anything. It's just observation, I guess is what you would say. That helps me too, because whenever I start seeing those things, I think, oh, remember that? And I thought that way, so we need to fix that. I'm very visual, and I see things like that, and it helps me out a lot. If you can trim a foot, shape, like I said, fitting up should be a lot easier. Because I don't know, hind feet, I don't know if you see the same thing, but hind feet seem to kind of all have this virtually the same shape. They just change in size and width and length. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
If you trim them,
Well, I did once I started trimming them better.
yeah, if you trim them better, they all kind of look
I
the same.
noticed that. Yeah.
Fronts, not so much, but hind feet, yes. So, and I don't know if the fronts aren't like that because of pathologies, and things like that. But hinds, it seems to be that way. And I thought about that for a while, and I'm like, crap, what am I doing wrong? Am I cookie cutter and all these hind feet because it's all the same moves at the anvil,
Right.
And then I go to the foot, and a lot of them will fit right up to my standard, but what am I doing wrong? And I thought about it. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm not trimming them wrong. Maybe that's how they are, So I always question everything I do, and the guys that work with me, they're like, you're your worst enemy. And I'm like, I know, because I'm always in my own head. I guess I'm trying to find my flaws instead of being happy with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So would you say you're your worst critic?
I think my wife might be my worst critic, but no, I'm just joking. She loves me, but yeah, I would definitely say I'm my worst critic. Whenever I was working for Charlie, he was my worst critic for sure. But right now, yes, I'm definitely my worst critic.
What's your favorite make of Rasp?
Oh boy, it used to be Save Edge, but they dropped the ball about 7-8 years ago, and their rasps are dull now. And I started using the Big Hoof, the Red Tank Big Hoof. I think Heller makes it.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I used that for a while because, I'm 6'2", and, holding that little bitty rasp, little 14-inch rasp, kind of my shoulders started hurting a little bit. So I started using the Big Hoof, and I found that was really handy. But then my hip started hurting because now I'm kind of rocking more with my hip because I have more rasp. I went back to the 14-inch Legend and started going to the gym. Now my shoulders don't hurt and my hips don't hurt. And so I've been pretty happy with it. And I just keep them sharpened up with a Sousa wheel. And speaking of the hip thing, I brought that back up because I said we would get back into that, but I never got back around it. I almost forgot about it. So I had a hip replacement about 3 years ago. Yeah. I had a total hip replacement on my right side about 3 years ago. And from that fracture from 15 years old, what happened is it fractured a growth plate. It wasn't actually in my hip. It was in the, what did they call it? The stem in the socket. And it basically started growing all this arthritis in there. And the pain that I had was because my socket was basically trying to fuse. And I had no idea, like it was bad, like really, really bad. So
sounds like it.
Yeah, whenever we met, I'd already had my surgery, so I was over it. But it's the best thing ever. So if anybody's ever thinking about hip surgery, and they're shoeing horses, do it. Don't even waste your time. Just go do it. If a doctor ever recommends it, just do it. And a matter of fact, the guy who did it is from Canada. The guy who did my surgery. He's in Orlando right now, but he does the
no way.
Yeah, some hockey team up there. I'm sure you guys have tons of them, like we have football teams. But some hockey team up there, he's their orthopedic surgeon. Really cool guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Hydakavich is his last name, if you ever hear of him. But he's a really good dude. He's like my age. I met him. I was like, dude, you're young. He's like, nah, we're old. I was like, dang it, you're right. I'm getting a hip surgery. So, yeah, I forget how old I am. I'm only 40.
Well, yeah, same here.
But it was the best thing that I could have ever done, to be honest with you. And I had a really good team. Yeah, I had a really good team that was helping me out. They cut up all my clients because I was down for 8 weeks. That was the most frustrating time of my life. Yeah. 8 weeks, I couldn't do anything because they didn't use cement.
I bet.
Yeah, he's like, you're so young. We're not going to put cement in there. You're just going to have to naturally graft to this thing. I was like, what does that mean? He says 8 weeks. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So it was a nail biter, but it was really, really worth it. Really worth it. But anyway, so I went back to the Legend and I like it. I keep it sharpened up, I got to sharpen about, I actually just started doing that. And it seems like if I sharpen them every day, they stay really sharp. And I get a couple weeks out of a rasp instead of like a week, if that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the other thing down here is during the summer, we may change rasps because we get so muddy and nasty. So we need something that cleans out a little bit better. And I think the Legend does a really good job of that. It stays pretty sharp through the winter and into the summer.
Okay. Well, and it's funny because I think the XL is supposed to be for more moist conditions, but a lot of people complain that it bungs up. But I've heard a lot of people say the Legend was
the Legend's pretty nice.
More what they wanted. Yeah.
In the Green Tang XL, I think that's what it's called. You know which one I'm talking about? The wide Green Tang?
Yep.
Yeah, I do not like the finish side on that thing. Whenever I go to round the foot up, barefoot, that thing wants to walk sideways on you, and I'm like, I'm going to take off a knuckle. I hate that thing. So I did try the Blue Tang, and I did like it because it does mimic the Legend quite a bit, but the Rasp side it seems like it has finer teeth, and they're closer together. So it's just not as aggressive, so it takes more Rasp strokes to get the job done for me.
Right.
Yeah, so I stick with the Legend.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What is your dream Farrier rig?
If fuel prices keep going up, I'm going to tell you, probably a van. But right now I pull a Stonewell trailer that was a body. I think you saw it. And actually, I don't think you did see the new deal. So right now, it's a Stonewell body put on a Neil Purdy or Finger Lakes Manufacturing trailer. But it comes off the trailer, and it can go on a flatbed pickup. So there's only 4 bolts hold this thing off.
Oh, no way.
So the trailer's like a little chariot. It's kind of crazy looking. Yeah, it is weird looking. Whenever I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pull that thing. But and then after the body got on it and it all tied together, I'm like, this thing's pretty cool. So I have not taken it off yet, but I did that because the last truck I had, I put darn near 400,000 miles on the blue truck. And I thought, if this thing ever goes down, I'm in a heap of a mess because my whole work's strapped to the back, and I've already had hip surgery. Right. My clients just aren't going to put up with this, if I'm down for any amount of time again. So I get paranoid, about some things like that. So I thought I'm going to buy a new truck. I'm going to put a flatbed on it, and I'm going to build this trailer so it can go anywhere. And so that's what I did. But man, I bought a new 2020 Chevy 2500. I am not putting a body on that thing. So I left it on the trailer. So I had a flatbed made for our farm truck. I'm like, we're just going to do it that way. So if it ever goes down, it can just go on the farm truck and I'll drive it, but I'm not taking the bed off this truck.
Right.
But I would say my dream truck. I love it. My dream rig, I always wanted, it's going to sound goofy, but I always wanted like a Sprinter van, a cabin chassis. And what I mean, a van, like what those vans that, not UPS, but what's the other one? Amazon Prime Drive. You know what I'm talking about? Those weird looking Sprinter vans, but just a cabin chassis and then a body on the back of it. I've always wanted one because those things they got to be fuel efficient. If Amazon's running them and UPS and FedEx and all those, they got to be fuel efficient, and a little dually one. I've always wanted one, but I've just never really been able to pull the trigger on something like that. One day I'm going to. One day you're going to be like, who's the guy in the van? And I'll be like, it's me.
Who's the Euro guy?
Yeah, who's that Euro guy? He comes out with his Florida thick Southern redneck accent. It's me. So, yeah.
I can picture it happening.
Yeah, it couldn't be white, though. It'd have to be some kind of cool color.
Yeah, you don't want them to be that standard. It has to be unique.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite rounding hammer to grab?
I kind of switch it up. So I like 2 pounds. 2 pounds is like the magic number. But for a long time, I swung a Jim Keith 1 3/4. And it was one that Jim actually made. It wasn't the MFC or whoever makes them now. And I love that thing. And it actually would travel with me everywhere I go. So whenever I go to Maine, it'd go with me to Maine. And I know that's kind of crazy to take your favorite hammer on the plane with you, but I did. And then I broke the handle on it last time I was in Maine. So I guess Maine lack of humidity really dries out hammer handles. And the first shoe, it just withered away in my hands. And it was the original handle. I don't even know how it even lasted that long because I've had this hammer forever. but it split right down the middle. So I had this little wimpy handle, and I have all these big old Frisians to shoe all weekend. So I went through a lot more propane because I needed my shoes a little bit hotter, so I didn't finish this hammer off. And there's nowhere to go up there. Nowhere. Matter of fact, the time before I flew up there, I left without nippers. I flew all the way up there, opened up my box, and I said, Josh, we didn't pack nippers. So I was trying to trim these feet with pull-offs. And I got about 3 done, and my forearms started cramping up. So we went to Tractor Supply, and I was one of those guys who bought some nippers at Tractor Supply. And I'm going to tell you something. I should have just stuck with my pull-offs. Those things were terrible. Oh. Yeah, it was the worst $50 I ever spent in my life. So they were terrible. I still have them. They're in my shop. I think I cut haywire with them now. But never again will I ever forget those. But right now, my go-to is an original John Atkinson hammer because I like a longer head hammer. I draw my clips over my horn with the heel of my hammer. Some guys use the side of their hammer, so they can use a real stubby hammer, a more American hammer. But I'm more of a Euro hammer guy. I like a longer hammer. And a matter of fact, that one was a Christmas present from the very first guy that ever rode with me one year, Josh Tompkins. One year he got me that hammer, and I've treasured it ever since, and I love that hammer. But it was the original, so cool. He made it too. So I have 2 cool hammers. One made by Jim Keith, and one was made by John Atkinson. Now they're all made like in Pakistan or somewhere. Yeah,
right.
And those are my favorite hammers.
Just keep an eye on those. People might be trying to take them. Yeah, once you find the magic ones, they're hard to let go of.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of bar stock to work with?
3/8 by 1. Yep. You can do anything with that stuff. You can draw it, bump it, turn it into anything you want. But 3/8 by 1, well, I would say that's the most versatile. My favorite, believe it or not, is concave. That stuff's just fun.
Really?
Yeah, I like working concave. It's just fun. That's whenever I break out that little Jim Keith hammer.
Right. Yeah.
Because you don't have to hit it hard. You're just basically massaging it around, and it turns into whatever it's going to be,
Yeah.
But yeah, concave, I would say concave, that 7/16 by 7/8 is probably my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Or 3/8 by 7/8, whatever.
And then you can reset it forever.
Yeah, you can, unless you're like me and my punches aren't very tuned up, and you just can't drive an E10 in an 11-inch piece of stock. It don't work.
Yeah. No matter how much you want it to.
Yep.
Is your truck a gas or diesel?
My other truck was a diesel, and I was trying to decide on what I wanted to do next. And I did buy a gas truck this time because I told myself the business actually bought this truck, which was the first time the business has actually bought anything. I'm incorporated S Corp. So I was like, you know what? This business is going to start working for me this year. So it's going to buy its own vehicle. It's not going to be connected to me personally. So I bought this truck through the business, but I had to make a decision. Do I want all the bells and whistles, or do I want more power than I'm ever going to need? So I chose bells and whistles. So I went with the gas motor. It's got the new 6.6 gas motor. It's actually really impressive. It doesn't get horrible fuel mileage. Pull in my trailer, I get 12 miles a gallon. Empty, it gets anywhere between 15 and 16. But my other truck with a body on it only got 15 miles a gallon. That was pretty much it. Your red truck, it was basically the same thing. You probably get 15 in it.
Yep.
And then gas is cheaper. It was cheaper to buy it. It's cheaper to maintain it. Sure, I don't have 1,000 pounds of torque like, some of my buddies have. They'll outrun me. They look cooler, sound cooler, but I don't care. I'm 40 with a hip replacement. We're just going to rock on with a gas motor for a while.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. But I do like it.
Yeah, it's a pretty slick looking rig. What's your favorite pastime after work? You might have covered this.
Well, if it's work related, getting in the shop and making shoes was a lot of fun. Non-work related is hopping on the golf cart with my kids and shining deer and hunting armadillos and just watching them get excited about that and shooting stuff.
Oh, okay.
We own quite a bit of land here in Florida, and between the family, we live kind of on opposite ends of our property. My mother-in-law and father-in-law live on one end and we live on the other end. And between us is around 500 acres. So we have
Oh, wow.
all this property that we can, do really cool stuff with. So I like building stuff like non-work related. Like I built my son a dune buggy, so it was a lot of fun with that project with him. So, just hanging out with them and if it's work related, I would say making shoes or talking to other horseshoers. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten home and sat in the truck like what I'm doing and just had, hour-long conversation just talking to other horseshoers about stuff, about struggles in life.
Right.
And it's kind of cool because we all have the same problems, we all have the same problems, same personal problems.
No matter who it is.
Yeah. Same financial problems, same struggles. It's kind of neat, that we all have the same struggles as horseshoers in one area or another.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like to do after work.
What is the next thing on your bucket list?
Right now, I mean, if it's farrier related or job related or career related, I would like to get my CJF for sure. And I also would like to retire before I die. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
to not be working and then pass, because that's actually what happened to one of the guys I worked for a while. Chuck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he retired on a Friday and we went to his funeral the following Thursday. He passed on Monday. That following
No
day.
way.
Or maybe it was a week later, but he went to the hospital for hiatal hernia surgery, which was a simple surgery. You don't even have to be put under. Well, I guess they figured out it was worse than they thought it was, so they put him under. Well, he had breakfast the morning before because, it was just a simple local anesthesia deal. And
right.
They didn't pump his stomach whenever they actually had to put him under.
Oh.
Yeah. So he basically colicked and died. And he was retired. Like that was like the beginning of his gold. So it kind of sucks. So
no kidding.
But on my bucket list, as far as not career related, is I want to go to like Germany and I want to watch this guy. I guess it is kind of career related. I want to watch this guy shoe a horse because, well, I'm sure a lot of them shoe like we do, but a lot of them also, they have their people, the horse owners, hold up those feet.
Yeah.
So I want to watch that. I want to be like, Well, I want to take some of this Euro style back to America because this is cool.
Right.
Like that's what I want to do.
Could you imagine how well behaved those horses must be?
Especially for hind feet.
Because the owner has to hold them.
And I'm not sticking my face down there for hind feet.
Yeah, that part does scare me. I've seen a few videos of it, and I just, no matter how good the horse is, at some point, how do you clear out of the way? There must be, they must have it figured out. But
well, and the other cool thing is, whenever you're watching somebody trim a foot, that foot always looks beautiful whenever you're standing 5 foot away. But whenever you're actually holding that foot and looking at it from a foot away, it looks like garbage. You're like, what have I done? I hope it looks good. Like whenever I look at other people's feet, I hope it looks like that to this person. So if you're in that position as the German farrier and looking at this foot, you're like, oh, this thing's always looking beautiful because I'm looking at it from this different angle.
Right.
So that would be kind of cool.
Good for your ego.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Or good for anybody.
Kidding.
Anybody's ego.
No kidding.
But those two things, and I'd like to go to Germany anyway, and I'd like to go to Mexico. I've never been.
No? Oh, I have, and yeah, you should go. Yeah.
I should.
On a resort.
But those are the two. Yeah. And Canada would be kind of cool as I go to Alaska. Just kind of go through Canada to go to Alaska.
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, you have to go through some cool parts to get to Alaska, so you should do that.
It was kind of neat whenever we fly to California, and you kind of run that southern border. It's kind of cool looking down out of the plane. You can see the, Mexico on the left and the U.S. on the right, and it's so like the colors just change of the ground. It's kind of neat. So that's kind of where I want to go.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Your favorite brand of keg shoe?
It would be Kirkhart's, the Kirkhart DFs. Those would be
Okay.
my favorite. And then I like the Con keggers as well for, just a little cheap, rim shoe or a compromise pattern shoe. You can do a lot with those with the rounded heels and a nice toe, and the fullering's really nice in them. But the section gets kind of weak on some of the bigger warm-blooded feet, the
Right.
thick wall. And I think I saw some they have some where the section is changing on the bigger shoes, maybe a 10 mil kegger or something. I saw something about that. But I think once we get up to that, I'm just going to stick with the DFs anyway, because I like the E-head nails on the big shoes.
Right. Yep. Gotcha. We don't have many dealers of the Cons up here, and I just learned about one on the West Coast, and a friend of mine is in love with the Con shoes, so
Yeah,
she's looking forward to having access to those again.
they're pretty good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into them once she gets some. Ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
Ideal for me would be 4 to 6. I like to be home at a good time. I don't like to be out real late, and I will get started early, need be, but generally I leave my house at 7:30, and I'm usually home by 5 to 7, somewhere in there.
Yep.
I like to help cook, and I don't like to help clean, but I like to help cook. So it just makes it easier to be home at a good time. And my wife gives lessons in the evening.
Yeah.
So with her little program, that's whenever her day kind of ramps up, is in the evenings.
Oh, okay,
The
right.
kids getting out of school. Yeah. So it kind of falls on me to take up the slack in the evening. And both my kids
Right.
homeschool, so she deals with that all day. So I have no problem getting home early and helping with the chores, as long as I don't have to do that. I couldn't imagine if I tried to teach my kids at home. Whew. They'd be dumb as a box of rocks.
Well, I think a lot of people had struggled with that here when they closed the schools down.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden they had to deal with their own children every day.
Yeah, well, that's what we did.
It's tough. Yeah.
They closed the schools, and we just put them in Florida virtual, right away. And they lost a semester, but it's okay. I mean, they're smart, and matter of fact, my son, the teacher, called the other day and said, you need to tell Bryce to slow down because he's going through these classes too fast. And I'm like, is he passing his classes? She says, yes, sir. I said, then what's the problem?
Yeah.
Well, he can't be retaining the information. I said, that's not really up to you. If he's passing the classes and getting all his work done, I mean, he's almost done with this school year already.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool. But if like I said, if I was in charge of this, he'd still be back in the 5th grade. I'll guarantee you.
That's hilarious.
My wife has been getting that done.
Well, they're in good hands. What's your favorite anvil?
Considering that through my career, I've only worked on a couple of anvils. My first anvil was a JHM certifier that I got from school, and I can still hear the ringing in my head, from using that thing.
Yep.
And my hand still hurt from using the heel end of it. It's the vibration still. So it's definitely not that one, although I still have it, in my shop. And then I have a JHM.
They're hard to let go of.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's a crappy anvil, but it was my first one. I have a JHM, I think it's called a competitor. It's like 250 pounds or 280 pounds, something like that. I have that in my shop. It's okay, but it still rings a lot. Once you get on the back half of the heel end of the anvil. But my favorite anvil that I use every day is the Scott 100-pound.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have 2 of those. I have one here and then one on a travel box. And that's just hands down my favorite anvil. And I have used the Scott Big Boy, and those are great anvils too. Just not so much for a truck. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And I had the pleasure of meeting Scott, and that dude is really cool. So yeah, he was really cool to hang out with. So he'll always have my business as far as anvils go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have the one with the taper heel or the square?
I have the turning cams. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. I have both of them are turning cams, and I don't have a problem using them. I don't use them a lot, but if I need to move something, I can just walk over there and move it.
Right. For that final tune-up.
Yep. That's what I tell.
Yeah.
I had a guy that used to tell me all the time, I can't believe you have turning cams. I said, well, until you start shoeing my horses, paying my bills, I guess I'm going to keep using it, or you can buy me a new one, but I'm not going to let go of this one. It's perfectly good Anvil just because you don't like it. I don't use the turning cams a lot, but they're there if I need them.
Right. Yep. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote?
Yeah, a couple of them. My dad told me whenever I was a kid, and you have to think about these. Is this PG-13? What is this?
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. Well,
it's going to be whatever. It's uncensored.
Okay. The first one was, if you're not in bed by midnight, then you might as well come on home. And then that's what he told me. Yeah. The second one, now this is the man married to my mother. So the second one, he says, whenever I told my dad, I said, I'm going to get married. I'm going to marry the woman that I'm married to now. And he looks over at me and he says, son, I've never seen a ring stop a hole. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're married to my mom. Well, yeah.
Advice to live by.
I know. So those are not real inspirational, but those kind of stuck with me.
Right. Gotcha. I think I already know the answer to this. Do you have a Farrier Terrier? Do you have like a dog that comes with you?
Well, yeah, I did for a day, and my kids took over him. So he's a stay-at-home dog now. So I got a little miniature Australian Shepherd, and I've always liked him. And I guess he's a toy. He's not really a mini. He's tiny, little old fella. And one of my clients gave him to me. Long story. It's one of my mule clients. Her husband passed away a couple of years ago, and him and I became really, really good friends. And he passed of cancer, and he raised these things and sold them. Well, I always his name was John. I always talked to John about them, and how cool they were, because his were really cool. A lot of these little toy Aussies you'll see are just crazy, but not his. His were always good and well behaved, just like his mules were, which was really awesome. So whenever I went over to see him the day he died, and he's laying there, and we were talking about Bailey, because he really loved my daughter too. She horse showed, and he always wanted to know what she was doing. And anyway, he was just a really good dude. He says, Bruce, no matter what, you have to take care of Patty's mules. I said, Patty was his wife. I said, I will, John. I said, don't worry. Well, he passed, and so I continued doing Patty's mules for, he's been gone, 4 or 5 years now. And I do her mules for nothing. I just go over there and shoe them or trim them, whatever they need, and I leave. Well, one day Patty says, one day, Bruce, I'm going to have to pay you for doing these mules. I was like, well, the only way that you could ever pay me is to give me one of those dogs. I said, if you'll give me one of those dogs, I said, we'll be set forever. And and she was like, I don't know about that. Those things are $1,500. And I'm thinking, well, and the thing was, I wasn't thinking, oh, crap, lady, what I'm doing is worth more. Now, what I thought was, that's $1,500 of income that she won't have if I get one of those dogs. Right. So, and I stewed on it for a little while, how, if I should pay her. I was trying to figure out what the right thing to do was.
Yeah.
And one day she texted me and she says, what color do you want? And I said, blue merle with blue eyes. And she sent me a picture of the one I have. She's like this? And I was like, just like that, and she says, well, this one's yours. I was like, perfect. So, he was weaned, and I went over there and picked him up. Actually, my helper and I were there, and he really liked my helper, Chris. So we hung out with the little pups for a little while, and I took him. And I mean, the minute I brought him home, I knew right there he was never going to be able to go to work with me. That was going to be it. This kid's, they love him. Oh my gosh. Really? Oh yeah. Yeah. If I get on to him for doing anything, they're like, Dad, you can't be mean to him. I'm like, I'm not. But, he can't get in the trash,
Yeah.
No, he turned out to be a really, really good dog. And, but the hair, I can't deal with the hair in the truck. So.
Okay.
Yeah. I decided, nope, he's not going. The kids love me for it because he's here now, and they're here all the time, so they enjoy having me.
Right. Yeah. It actually works out for everybody.
Yeah. But if I do
Gotcha.
get another dog, I will say this. I had one, a Farrier dog, whenever I started shoeing. It was a rat terrier. And one day, I'm working on a horse, and I had the windows cracked in the truck because I didn't let him out because he was really small. And if somebody had dogs, I didn't want them to get killed, basically.
Right. Mauled.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was eating my lunch whenever I was on my way over there. Well, I didn't quite finish it, and I had a bag of combos. So, and it was sitting on the console of the truck. Well, I heard, I don't know if you can hear this, but it was, can you hear that?
Yeah.
So it was his head beating up against the glass of the door in my truck. And I walk over there like, what is that noise? And I open the door. He had his head stuck in the combo bag, and he was like taking his last breath because he couldn't breathe. He couldn't breathe. Yeah. And I was like, Duke, what in the world? So I get this combo bag off of there. And I had like 4 combos in it, and he ate all 4 of them before he decided to die. Oh, yeah. So I get his combo bag off his little head, and I'm like, that's it. No more truck dog. I can't risk losing my dang dog because you're a pig
Right.
eating this combos. So, which was my fault, but his fault too. I blame him a little bit. He should have had more respect for
no
my
kidding.
combos. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it.
Well, lucky for him, he decided to bash his head against the door.
Yeah. He was telling me, he's like, hey, get this bag off my head. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep.
If you're stumped on a case or need backup, who do you call?
I've got a really good friend named Kenny Mead that I usually call, and his son, Kevin Mead. There's quite a few of them. I mean, I talked to, there's probably at least 10, that I'll call for different things. Some of those guys are good at certain things. Some of them are even better at certain things. So, there's certain things I'll always call about. I've got another buddy, Josh Tompkins and Robbie Hunsiger. I'll call them about different things that I need help with. They're all good, at certain things. But they're, some of them are just great at all things, so, there is that too. And then Tom Holst, I talk to him a lot about, different things, especially with the driving horses. He shoes a lot of those. So the combined driving horses. So I have some questions about that.
Cool. You've got a network.
My phone's full of people that I call and ask. Yeah. It's basically, we call it Tampa Bay. That's what we do. That's how we roll down here. We're all friends, and it is really cool. None of us are
No kidding.
we're not even frenemies. I mean, we're all buddies, which is really nice.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's good to have, especially with lost shoes and things like that too.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yep. Or hip surgeries.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Do you have a favorite shoe or package for a mystery lameness when the client doesn't want to pay for an MRI or any other diagnostics?
You can never go wrong with leather pads.
Yeah.
Whether it be a wedge leather or a flat leather, or a rim pad out of leather, or a poor man's heart bar out of leather, or, and sometimes it's not just the leather, but it's what you put under the leather that helps a lot too.
Yeah.
So I would say a leather pad. Yep.
There you
of
go.
Some sort.
That's a great answer. Yeah. What do you use as your planner?
I use my phone, Google Calendar.
Do you?
Yep, I sure do. And I used to carry pen and paper, but I decided that my phone was good enough for that. But, it's funny you should ask that, because I don't know if sometimes a lot of these clients I've been shoeing for years and years, and I have like Mondays I'm at this barn, Wednesdays I'm at this barn. So a lot of times I don't really use the planner.
Huh.
I just know when I'm supposed to go. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Even a week to week, like it's like, okay, well, I did so-and-so yesterday, so I know I got to go over here tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of times it's kind of, I hate saying it, but like intuition. So you just know when they're due. You know where you're going because it's repetitive. You know what I mean? You've been doing the same thing. Now, if I ever get fired from one,
Let's just screw up your whole week.
It's going to mess it up. Well, it's like you not coming down to Winding Oaks. I'm like, crap, how am I going to do this? It rocked the boat. I'm like, my brain does not work this way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Brooksville every Monday. What?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that could really throw you off.
Yeah.
What's your favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
Oh, I guess dealing with it. I guess I don't take anything for nothing. I just deal with it. I had whenever I had my hip problems, it was the most excruciating pain I've ever dealt with, and it lasted for so long.
I can imagine.
Years and years. Because I was waiting so long before I got it replaced, so I wouldn't have to do it again.
Right,
in my
yeah.
working age. So I dealt with it for a long time. So I guess the little minor bumps and cuts and bruises really don't bother me a whole lot. I might complain about it, but
built up a tolerance.
I've
to
built
it.
up a pain tolerance. Yeah. Like I get burned, and I don't even like whatever. This guy, as a matter of fact, today he goes, "A piece of slag just hit you in the face, and you didn't even flinch." I was like, it stuck onto my cheek. He goes,
I
stuck.
hate it when it does that.
He's like, "It's stuck to your cheek. You don't feel that?" I was like, "Yeah, I feel it." He's like, "You gonna get it off of there?" I was like, "Yeah, whenever it cools down, I don't want to burn my finger and my cheek."
Yeah, have you ever had one go in your mouth?
Yes, in my eyelid too.
Oh, yeah.
The ones in the mouth are, it'll teach you to keep your mouth closed.
Yep, exactly. It made me aware of how much I forge with my mouth open, which is
or your ear
probably
hole.
not the greatest. Yeah, that sucks too. Yep. Do you have a favorite drink?
Yes. My favorite drink is gin and tonic with lime.
Yeah?
Believe it or not. Yeah. Yep. Nothing sophisticated. I like Tanqueray and tonic.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you work out?
I do. I go to the gym at least 4 days a week before work.
Holy
every morning.
jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm usually in the gym at 5:30, and I spend an hour in there, and then I come home and get the kids up, eat breakfast with them, and then I'm usually leaving the house every morning at 7:30.
Wow. How do you keep that routine? Is it hard?
It is.
Or do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it. I like going to the gym in the mornings more than the evenings, because I don't know if your gym or anybody else's gym is like mine, but in the evenings, it is a madhouse. Like, it's so busy, and there's people everywhere, and they're way bigger than I am. They look like little Hulk Hogan's, and they're younger than I am, and it's like, I don't even want to be in this crowd. They're like the cool kids. Yeah. So I go in the morning with the old guys, and then I kind of blend in with them. Yeah, I think it's easier in the morning because you can just get up and get your day started, and you just rock out. I didn't go this morning though. I should have went, but that was my day off because I'll have one day off during the week, so I go 4 days a week. So that was it. So I got to go Tuesday through Friday now.
Okay, yeah, no breaks in between.
No breaks.
What would you have been if not a farrier?
Probably homeless. No, honestly, I probably would have been an auto mechanic or diesel mechanic, or I still would have been working on the farm for that guy that told me that there was no money in shooting horses.
Right.
So I probably would have been some of those, either of those, if not all of those, because he did have a lot of diesel trucks too. But I am pretty passionate about like mechanicking and things like that. I like tinkering with stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. Yeah. We built the son a go-kart.
That's right. You said that.
Yeah, I like to build a lot of different weird things. Just bought a mini truck, fixing to put a motor in it, so that'll be kind of cool.
That'd be your shoeing rig for at the horse show or something.
I don't know what I'm going to do with it. We don't have mountains to climb up down here. Maybe some mud holes. I don't know. It's going to be fun though. That's all I know.
No kidding.
Yeah.
If you were to be stuck in a shop with somebody for a month under a quarantine, who would you like to be stuck with?
Probably my dad.
Yeah?
Yeah. Or my grandfather. If we're not talking about horseshoeing, if we're just talking about people.
Yeah.
If we're talking about horseshoeing, I would say Kenny Mead, because we're still going to build some stuff, like some cool stuff that's not shoes. But we'd be stuck in his shoeing shop because he's a metal fabricator too. So yeah.
Okay.
If we were in there for a month, we'd knock out some rigs. That'd be fun. Maybe he could teach me how to finally break metal and weld. That would be pretty cool.
No kidding.
Yeah. Nah, Kenny's a handy guy.
Sounds like another potential guest.
Oh man, he's pretty smart.
That's awesome. Well, that's all of the questions.
Okay, cool.
Thank you again.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. It was pretty awesome.
It's been great. Thank you.